What's up? It's Marco, Sage of Soccer, and today we talk about some of the performances from MLS prospects over the past weekend. We had a couple of good performances this weekend. Before we get into it, I'm just going to say I'm going to be going over these players with ages included, but not their actual age. I'm going to be saying their birth year, and for the record, if somebody's a 2001 birth year and younger, they're eligible for the Olympic team, and if somebody's a 2003 birth year or under, they're eligible for the U20 team. We don't have to worry about the U17 team at the moment. Nobody's eligible for that just yet. I don't think so, at least. So, now, jumping into the performances, starting off, we got to talk about Gabriel Slonina with another clean sheet. That's 4 clean sheets in his first 5 games, and while making some really good saves. He's making a serious push to be brought to Qatar, and I just want to say that there's a very good chance that by the end of the season, or by Qatar, he is our best goalkeeper who's getting consistent playing time. Because I think he might just pass on Sean Johnson this year because he's been looking very good. Now, he still has some things to clean up. I'd like his distribution to get a little bit better, but Johnson's not known for that. And I'm looking at our goalkeepers who are going to be over in Europe. Man, Matt Turner, he's probably not going to be a starter at Arsenal. Zach Steffen's certainly not going to overtake Ederson. And Ethan Horvath's not looking like he's going to be playing consistently for Nottingham Forest. So there is a very good chance that Gabriel Slonina is our best goalkeeper playing regularly going into the World Cup. Now, that wouldn't mean that you start him or anything like that, but it's something to consider, and he's been looking very good. I think at this point, he's like a world level wonder kid. People are taking note of him all over Europe. He's going to be a very good player. And he has a very good chance at being the MLS top goalkeeper going into the MLS Best 11, especially since Matt Turner's out with his unspecified foot injury. So, Gabriel Slonina looking really good. And staying in Chicago, Brian Gutierrez is another player who got a lot of time this week. He was actually off the bench, but Shaqiri picked up an injury pretty early, so Brian Gutierrez came onto the game. He's been doing pretty well, but nothing really exemplary. He's a 2003 player. Slonina is a 2004. After that whole intro, I forgot to mention that. But Gutierrez is a 2003 player, and it looks like he's looking pretty good, but at the same time, I don't feel like he's really distinguished himself as a prospect from a Paxton Aronson, a Quinn Sullivan, or a Caden Clark. Hopefully Shaqiri, let me rephrase that. If Shaqiri is out for a long period, hopefully Brian Gutierrez will get a lot more time in a starting role, and he can really start to get some playing time and make his impact on the league, because right now Gutierrez, he looks good, but he's just kind of another player in a mesh of very similar prospects. Next, I just want to mention NYCFC, as both Tayvon Gray and Andres Johnson, who are both 2002s, neither of them played for New York City FC this week. They've been battling for the right back job. Justin hasn't had the best performances lately. Tayvon Gray's picked up an injury. Hopefully one of them will be playing, but disappointed to see that. Now going over to the Philadelphia Union, and 2 players who continue to play well are Nathan Harriel and Leon Flach. They're both 2001 players, and they're both continuing to play well and very similar as well. Nathan Harriel has been extremely solid defensive right back. Going forward, he needs to get a little bit better, but he's still a young player that could progress. And again, Leon Flach, at that 8 position, he's a lot more defensive. He hasn't developed much more offensively, but his defensive ability is still very good, and he's a really solid player. I really don't think there's any difference between him and Kellen Acosta at the moment, and both those guys are looking really good. I'd like to see both of them in a December MLS camp. Probably not the national team just yet, but I'd like to see them in a Camp Cupcake or something like that, and that's going to be something I say about a lot of these players. Next guy for the Philadelphia Union is Quinn Sullivan. He's a 2004 player, and he earned his first start of the season after a great U20 window, and he's looking a lot more polished this season. You could see the talent before last season, but it wasn't really translating onto the field. But now he's able to make impacts. He's making a couple of good runs on the field. His passing is looking a lot better. He's winning a lot of corner kicks, actually. But the final ball hasn't been there just yet, but he hasn't gotten too much time. So it's looking really promising there. And out of the Fantastic Four, spelled with a PH, on the Philadelphia Union of him, Jack McGlynn, Paxton Aronson, and Brendan Craig, it looks like Sullivan might be the first guy to break out, and he might be the most promising player out of those 3. And something to note about Sullivan, his work rate and his energy is insane. For a player of his age, he really shouldn't have the stamina that he has. And I think he's already seen as like a successor to Alejandro Bedoya, who's a former national team player and someone who did very well in France in his own right. So Quinn Sullivan, he's a really promising player. Like, I'd say his floor is Bedoya, and he's probably going to reach that really soon. And I expect him to continue to get better, and he's going to be a really good player. So next, after a bunch of academy players, we're going to be talking about an MLS draft pick, and Ben Bender. He's a 2001 player, and he continues to start for Charlotte. He's been Charlotte's main creative threat. He's been playing as a left midfielder type position, but he's probably more of a center mid in his actual, more natural position. And he's probably the best offensive young American in the MLS right now. Realistically, I'd like to see him given a shot at the December camp coming up for the MLS players, and it should note that he's been playing really well adjusting from college to the pro level game. And that was a small period to adjust. So maybe if given more time, he could just continue to develop and continue to become an even better player. And this is a good sign of his ability to adjust, so maybe he'd adjust to Europe very well as well. So Ben Bender, we have a very small sample size of him, but it's looking very good. Next guy I want to talk about is George Campbell, another 2001 who's been very impressive for Atlanta this season. And he may have earned himself a starting role. It's still tough to see because the center backs have been going through a bit of injuries, international breaks, and red cards. So we don't know if he's going to be starting just yet, but he started 4 of their first 5 games. And by all means, this season he's been better than Miles Robinson. In a very limited sample size, mind you, but he's been looking good. He's got all the physical traits needed. He's strong enough as a center back, good in the air, he's very fast, and his on-ball ability is very decent at an MLS level. How it translates to an international level, we'll have to see, but it's looking really good. He needs to put it all together. I'd compare it to Mark McKenzie at the moment, where you look at him and he has all the traits, but he's still a young player, mistakes still happen, but he's looking really promising and someone to keep an eye on. A couple of left backs I want to talk about, John Tolkin, 2002, and Noah Allen, 2004. Not too much to update on them. Tolkin continues to start and play pretty well for New York Red Bull. He hasn't taken that step forward offensively that you'd like to see, but he's still looking pretty solid defensively. Unfortunately, Cade Clark for New York Red Bull picked up a knock over international break, and he's out. Noah Allen for Miami. He got another start as Breck Shea and Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain are injured at the moment. Or Kieran Gibbs, my bad. And I'm going to keep making that joke, by the way. And he's been looking a lot better this season as it's gone on. I expected him to only get like a couple of chances, but he's playing a lot more than expected due to the injuries as a left back, as I mentioned. And while he still looks like a young player, you can see him developing defensively. He's getting a lot more confident going forward, and he's looking really promising. Like, I'd really like him to be involved in the U20 group going forward. I would probably still take Caleb Wiley over him at the moment, but it's definitely a discussion. I'd like to see both of them. And the last guy I want to talk about, and this is more of a bigger discussion rather than just about the player, is Cade Cowell. So Cade picked up his first goal of the season, and he's continuing to play on a wing position, and he's looking pretty good, but he's not looking the best right now. This is a bit of a side tangent I wanted to go on, but it's something I want to talk about, and to me it seems like we're treating Cowell like how basketball fans treat somebody like a Russell Westbrook, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Zion Williamson, Ben Simmons, to be honest, LeBron James, and that they're like unskilled players but are extremely athletic. And you just look at them and go, oh man, if they pick up a jump shot, it's over. They'll be unbeatable. And they kind of never do. Sure, if you have a great team around them, you can win. We saw that with all the super teams LeBron had, or Giannis could just go off like he did last year because he's probably going to be MVP again. But at the same time, like, there's a reason why skill ends up being more important. There's a reason why Kevin Durant and Stephen Curry broke the NBA while LeBron James' super teams really underachieved. This is kind of unrelated to Cowell himself, but I feel like how we view athleticism in this country kind of hurts our soccer teams. Like, I understand liking somebody for game-breaking speed, like unskilled players who are just extremely fast. They are always going to be valuable, especially late in the game as substitutes. But at the same time, like, you know, I feel like being strong is kind of overvalued. I mean, look at somebody like Paul Pogba. He's a player who is probably the strongest player on the field at just about every match he plays, but when he's at his best, it really doesn't matter, and you still pair him with like a defensive player. Like in France, he was the best when he played alongside Conte, and he was basically like in the same role as when Chelsea had Cesc Fabregas, where you just pair him alongside somebody who's really good defensively so he can be more free to play, and his strength end up not really mattering at all. So I still like Cade Cowell, and his speed is very good. His strength is, well, it's not valuable. It can definitely create mismatches. Like, I'm a Crystal Palace fan. I've seen Christian Benteke light up Arsenal more times than I can count just because they weren't able to deal with somebody as strong as him. And his finishing is very good as well. So, like, this is just kind of unrelated to Cade Cowell, but I feel like how we view athleticism is unproductive in this country. I want to make a whole video about it because, I don't know, like, I feel like a nation like Canada, maybe because they have hockey as such a big sport in their country, like, their players seem a lot more ready for the world of soccer, like guys like Owen Hargreaves, Alphonso Davies, Jonathan David. I don't know, it's a weird thing to talk about. I just want to mention it here, but despite that, I'm still pretty high on Cade Cowell. I think it's more for his finishing ability and his pace. I don't feel like his strength is going to end up meaning as much as some people think it will. So yeah, that's all the players I want to talk about for the MLS this week. A couple guys I didn't mention who came on as like subs, like Paxton Harrison, Kyle's teammate Nico, who got a little bit of time at a very young age. Obed Vargas came on as a sub. A couple of guys weren't playing because they just got back from the international window, so that's understandable. But I want to talk a bit about all these guys who played, and yeah, that's all I'll talk about right now. See ya.